Hello and welcome back to A Sharper Life. I'm your host, Nikki Sharp, a two-time best-selling author, wellness expert, and your personal transformation coach. Now today we have an incredible interview. It is in studio live, and I have Dr. Nilesh Satguru, who is a self-mastery coach and compassion expert. He qualified as one of the youngest doctors in the UK at 22 with over 21 letters after his name. After over a decade of practicing medicine, Nilesh felt something that many of us do. Having what looked like massive external success, yet facing a tremendous amount of internal unhappiness. Because of this, he made a change in his own life and career and now helps high performers activate their potential by mastering their emotions with compassion. His work has been featured by brands including Entrepreneur, Mind Valley, while his talks he's given at the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine and the Royal Psychological Society. Welcome, Dr. Satguru.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive in. I want to talk about this thing that it seems like we're all going through at the moment of we all want more. We want what used to be called the white picket fence, the house, the kids, and now we are all in this sort of go, overachievement. And it's like we can't seem to stop. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of different things happening within politics and wars. And so I feel like, and my question for you is, how do we navigate these times when our world seems to be based on a very masculine-driven societal standards?
I think I've got to come straight to the three brain systems. We come straight in with a bit of neuroscience. So I love the three brain systems described by Professor Paul Gilbert. He's one of the leading lights in the UK on compassion. Little side note, anyone who's curious about anything I mentioned, please go and read the things yourself because you're going to get right to the root of it. Anyway, he speaks about the wanting system, the threat system, and the soothing system. Now, most of us are flipping between the wanting and the threat system. Just as you say, more. Am I in stress? I want more. I don't have it. I'm now in lack. And therefore, there's a resistance to what this life is at the moment. And we can all benefit from being in the soothing system a bit more. Now, full disclosure, in the last few years, I have found myself in the threat system. You know, my father died unexpectedly. I've been through really difficult challenges with my family. And so whatever you're going through, like I hear you right now, and it is incredibly hard. But everything's trainable, and this is a thing that we know from neuroscience and neuroplasticity, from psychological theory like growth mindset, from universal law like law of attraction, law of vibration, etc. So coming back to the soothe system as much as possible is the key in these times.
And when you say the soothe system, what I'm hearing, and I could be incorrect, so please do correct me if I'm wrong, would this be similar to like fight, flight, freeze, and our sympathetic nervous system, and then dropping into the parasympathetic from what you're saying is the soothe?
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So the three brain systems, to go in a bit deeper. So we look at neurotransmitters that mediate these systems. So the threat system is mediated by cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. The wanting system's only mediated by our favorite neurochemical, dopamine. And then the soothe system is your oxytocin, your serotonin, your endorphins. And this is one that's massively undervalued, underrepresented in modern life, and is really, really needed. And we can go into a lot of depth as to how to do that. But the first intention must be a shift from fear to love. One of my favorite texts is A Course of Miracles. And A Course of Miracles says a miracle is when we shift our perception from fear to love.
I have a million different places I want to go right now because you said I want to, and we will get to, I want to talk about dopamine and oxytocin because that is such an important thing, especially as we're talking about the want system and the soothe system. What I'm seeing, and the question that I kicked off with, where we're in this very fear-based go, we need more in order to feel fulfilled, and yet the very similar to what you went through, that was your change of career, and something that I've experienced many times in my life, is you can have all of these external things that we keep chasing after, which I believe is out of fear. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. How do we know when we're going after something from that fear mindset and our amygdala is getting tipped off and we're in fight or flight, flight, freeze, the sympathetic nervous system? So how do we know that we're in that, or if we're actually going after something because it's in alignment with ourselves?
Start with your emotions. Okay, that's the key takeaway for the rest of your life. This information will literally transform the whole course of your existence if you start and pay attention to your emotions. I'm not just talking week by week, month by month. I'm talking by minute, second by second basis, which, by the way, is how long an emotion should last. And we can go into the science of that.
Can I actually pause you right there for people listening? Like, we've all heard about, okay, feel your emotions and the amount of people, and we'll definitely talk about this, of how many people numb and avoid and suppress. But let's get down to the basics of what is an emotion.
Amazing.
And
I'm so glad
and then why is it so hard for us to actually allow ourselves to experience it?
Okay, so let's talk about some amazing work from one of the Times was calling the 100 most influential people in the world, Paul Ekman, and he's one of the leading researchers on emotions. So the guy really changed the game. We can actually reverse back to Darwin in around 1870, and he spoke about a universality of emotions, i.e., wherever you go in the world, everyone has a same set of core emotions, and we can identify
six
these.
of them, correct?
Right, basic, thought to be 6/7.
6/7, yeah.
We can go through this basic emotions. And interestingly enough, there's basic emotions, and then there's self-conscious emotions. And actually, my work is more in the self-conscious emotions. But yeah, Paul Ekman, he went in about 1970 to study a tribe in New Guinea to find out this tribe had not been exposed to the Western society, the media, the real world, as we know it anyway. And they went to go and look at these people's faces, read them stories. That's meant to elicit emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, contempt, surprise, and disgust. And what they found was that there is a universality of emotions. So emotions, I like to think of them as your chemical compass. Okay, so guiding you to your authentic truth. Hence, this is how you know whether you're in fear or you're in love. Now, there's many other ways of saying this. Is your heart open? Is your heart closed? Heart opening signs are things like crying, laughing, feeling a oneness with nature and the world. Heart closing signs are, I like to call them the 3 S's, or seeking. So scrolling, sugar, seeking even like sex and porn and these things. These are signs your heart is closing. So when you think about an emotion, it is like it's got a few core features that are characteristic throughout all of them. Number 1 is that it has a signal. Okay. Number 2 is that it has a physiological response. This is so important. You don't get to choose your emotions. Right? And then number 3 is that there's antecedent events, i.e. there's a preceding event that triggers the emotion. Now, you got onto this because we were talking about emotions only lasting for seconds and minutes, and they can measure that. This is how they know. There's a lot of stuff going around saying an emotion should only last 90 seconds. Partly true, partly not true. It's very variable depending on the events. So what we know is that if you are experiencing what you believe is an emotion all day, actually what's happening is it's the thinking, feeling loop. You're experiencing the emotion of sadness, and then the story and the self-conscious emotions of shame, of blame, of guilt, of embarrassment, of envy, of pride, of jealousy. These are the self-conscious emotions. It's your sense of self that's creating a feeling, a mood, and then eventually mental illness, right? If it goes on for long enough. So an emotion should only last a short amount of time. It is your chemical compass guiding you to your authentic truth. It's got a physiological response. It's preceded by an event, and there's usually some kind of facial signal. There's a bit more, but I'll stop there.
I love everything that you say, and I will continue with this and then go back to some of the original questions that I was asking. But just to clarify for those listening or watching, emotions, as you said, 6. I know that there were 6 originally. Then their research
Contempt was thought to be the 7th.
Right, and then there was 7th, and then I know that there's the secondary, and then the third category. So what is now considered the emotional wheel.
Yes.
And so I just want to share this because the emotional wheel. Do you work with clients, the emotional wheel?
Yeah. I mean, we'll get onto that in a minute because I think there's a beauty in it, and as with every bit of organized knowledge, a really important message I want to share with people is that your intuition is the most important thing. And so, yes, all of these tools are great. Even everything I share with you, I would say don't listen to everything. Listen to the parts of you that resonate with the parts of me. So yes, the emotion was good, but your intuition, right? So you will know if you feel aligned or not aligned.
Right.
And it's about trusting that above anything else.
And I think to kind of tangent on that, what I find so fascinating about intuition, to have intuition means you have to be in tune with yourself. And the amount of people that are not in tune, like you said, the 3 S's, when we're seeking things and we're filling ourselves with all this external unhealthy dopamine. It's like you're not very in tune with yourself. And I find so often with clients, the reason I love the emotional wheel, for example, is that we can feel like butterflies in your stomach can come from feeling nervous, like sitting here doing this interview could elicit butterflies in the stomach, anxiousness, nervousness, which can be both excitement and also being terrified because of perceived judgment. So just throwing in this story that we then come up with. But the intuition piece is, I find so fascinating because there are so few people, I feel like, in today's day and age where we are living in a masculine, absolutely masculine driven society, which is very linear, go, focused on money, focused on things and success and achievement. And what you and I are teaching is quite opposite in helping people come out of that matrix. And then you have people reaching for the dopamine and all these kind of unhealthy external things. And then we add on fear from all of these. And so it's to be in line with intuition. I find in today's day and age, holy shit, it's hard. So I'd love to go into that, and we'll then come back to emotions and bring it into compassion and understanding that and joy. But how can someone tap into intuition when and I just want to preface this I have so many clients who they're like, I don't know how to be in tuned with my eating and what my stomach wants. Why? Because they've been binging for years and years, or emotional eating, or someone is drinking because they're feeling lonely. So how can someone number one, understand what intuition actually is? And then number 2, tap into it when you've been out of alignment with yourself.
And I know you've helped loads of people with what you do in your work with intuitive eating. It's a very, very beautiful thing. And I think a really important thing to mention is it's a skill. Steve Jobs said intuition is a skill and it needs to be trained, a discipline that needs to be trained. And I couldn't agree more. And now is the time for intuitive thinking. I've tried living super logical, intellectual. My whole life was like that before. I only became intuitive. Well, I was intuitive my whole life, but I only really started to train it in the last few years. So I really want to share this with people, that this is, I have had to learn this. And I have a lot of different stories about this. So let's just see what lands right at the moment. I mean, the most simple way is largely we are dealing with, a lot of people that I deal with are empaths, right? And I've learned quite a bit about the neuroscience of this, and it's deeply fascinating. But basically, if you're an empath, you feel the pain of the world. You mentioned the election. You go into a city, you go into a shopping mall, and you just feel tired and drained, and you feel the anxiety or the frustration or the guilt. And what I want to say to anyone who feels that, I always like that too, and it's okay. In fact, it's an absolute gift. It's a superpower. The reason you feel that way is because more than likely at a young age, there was an event that caused pain. And now emotional pain and physical pain, same areas in the brain. Insular cortex.
Yes, to interrupt and not to interrupt. Sorry. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
About the brain?
Physical pain?
Yeah.
emotional pain, same areas of the brain.
So if let's say you, I don't know, break your shin or you hurt your knee or we feel heartbreak.
Yeah.
So the brain and
it doesn't really differentiate between these things. And this is why, you know, there's a big movement and an amazing movement for us to normalize when people are mentally unwell, and that it's the same as breaking a leg. It really is, you know, insular cortex, mid-cingulate cortex or anterior cingulate cortex, these areas of the brain, part of the limbic system, these are really affected by pain. Now, what we know is in empathy, right? So if me and Nikki did a study and Nikki got trained in empathy, I got trained in compassion, and we were shown pictures of people's faces going through suffering. These are famous experiments that are done. Well, what it would show is if you were trained in empathy, the areas of the brain associated with pain, those areas, and suffering, they would light up. I.e., you're just witnessing someone else's pain, right? And you'll see the same, you'll feel the same feelings. It's that feeling of feeling felt, right? Empathy comes from this Greek word in feeling. So this is one of the biggest blocks to intuition, feeling other people's pain, feeling the pain of the world, beliefs, society's conditioning, but also, interestingly enough, double-edged sword, these people are the most intuitive once you can do 3 powerful things. Number 1, be in silence. And I mean true silence. No books, no podcasts, no talking. And I try and have a period of that when I don't have my children every morning for a few hours. Number 2 is nature. Nature is one of the most beautiful healing things, and it really does connect us with our true essence. And there's a whole concept of biophilia. We are nature. We are the same thing. And then the third one, which is the hardest one, and this is where I work with my clients mainly, is non-judgment. And you know, people say to me, "It's like, oh, but I am happy. I don't judge myself that much." And I will say, "Listen, I hear you, but listen to your speech. We're very unconscious with our speech. Oh, my hair doesn't look okay, or that. I'm not asking for you to be, you know, toxically positive as well. That's an important thing to mention.
I'm glad you brought that up too. Yeah.
But if you were to reduce your judgment, you have 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay, most of these thoughts, I realize them, are on loop, and they are replaying all of the insecurities, all of the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, like I say, all those things that we have about ourselves. And really, if we look at stress, actually, I was in the sauna the other day, and I met this businessman, and he was saying how stressed he was, and I shared this with him, that stress is so resistance times pain equals suffering, right? Resistance is the root cause of stress. But really, what is resistance? A resistance is a resistance to who we truly are. A resistance to our spiritual essence, our infinite, eternal, limitless being, which there is no judgment. And so resistance is judgment. If you find you're stressed about a situation, if you look really deeply into this, and believe me, it's really, really hard, you'll find on some level there's a self-judgment piece about the situation that's going on. I could have done this differently. What does this say about me? I'm a failure. I'm not capable. I'm not worthy. I'm not whole. So yeah, the most powerful piece to work on is the judgment piece. Your intuition will turn back on. Then it's the next step, which is following through. And that's the hardest thing.
The action. And I actually always tell people, there's so many, like once something takes off on social media, you and I both know it's like these big words of toxic positivity or bypassing or narcissism or manifesting or, you know, and I find like with manifesting, one of the biggest, two of the biggest missing action pieces. Number one is that if you don't clear really the distortions of the fear and that the negative self-talking loop and the voice, and I say name it to tame it. So we have to understand that and the specific exercise that I have people do is I call it your Siamese twin. And I remember when I was going through my 2 eating disorders, and I'm like, I don't understand why I can't just stop doing this thing and why I feel like such a failure. And I'd look in the mirror, and it hit me one day, and I took my pen out and I started drawing, and I drew myself a body. It wasn't a great drawing. That wasn't the point, but I drew another neck that came out of my neck and another head, and it was larger than mine. And I was like, oh, that's my Siamese twin, and I can't kill her. She's a part of me, But right now, her voice is fucking loud.
Yes.
And so what I've learned to do and how I help clients is tame the voice and make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller to the point. And I'll give an example and a story here. But what I find is that when people try to manifest, they're doing so from a place of fear, which means that you're actually going to call in things that you don't really want because you are not coming from the higher vibration. But just what you were saying, one of the biggest missing pieces is the action. And the way I explain it is it's not just the action, action is momentum of energy moving forward. And it's as simple as that of once you want something, like if I want to do this interview.
Yeah.
And I want to be here today, I have to actually find the podcast studio.
Yeah.
And then I have to put the deposit down and pay. And so it's these little action pieces that people say like, oh, I want a better job. I want to make more money. I want to find my soulmate. And it's like, okay, are you complaining about the dating scene and the dating apps?
Yeah.
Are you saying how shitty you look when you're going out and, you know, oh, I'm not pretty? Are you actually continuing to say yes, even though you might not feel great? And it's like, that's the action piece of it. So I love that we're on the same page with all of this.
100%. And you know, something I really, and I can owe my medical background to this, is I've gone really deep in 3 specific areas. So I've gone deep on the body in medicine. And then after a while, I started to go deep in the mind. And then I went deep in the spirit. And so when I work with people, all roads lead to the same truth. And that's how you know it's truth, right? Which is feeling is the secret. Emotions are the key. And yeah, we're living in a fear-based, desire-based society. And, you know, that's got us to a certain place, and we can be grateful for that. But it's also created a lot of duality, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And I feel like we're at a time now where we're seeing a seismic shift, a paradigm shift. And yeah, switching to fear. From fear to love. I'll share the story. I went to go watch a movie called Lal Lal Crocodile in the cinema with my son. So I've got 2 kids. I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And me and my son do cinema trips. Anyway, in the movie, there's this singing crocodile who is Javier Bardem. Amazing voice in the movie. And he goes in, this pet crocodile somehow turns up at this family's house. Their family moves into a home in New York, and they all kind of have the soul sucked out of them. Okay, so the dad's working, not doing what he loves. The mum used to cook. She's not cooking as much anymore. And the crocodile comes and encourages them to all do what they love. And I was watching this movie and I had this kind of insight moment, whereas fear is just the absence of love. Just like how darkness is the absence of light. And in the presence of light, the darkness dissipates. In the presence of love, fear dissipates. Right? Love is water. Fear is fire. And so in the movie, of course, the crocodile is representing love, and therefore everyone goes and starts doing what they love, and all the anxiety in the family kind of seeps away because they're doing what they love. So, you know, I think that all of these, if you're experiencing anxiety, if you're experiencing overthinking or worries, then loving where you are in that moment. And I know this is kind of a cheesy line, so people are like, okay, yeah, fuck you, Nilesh, like, how do I love where I am in this moment? Like, I'm going through a divorce, my parents are sick, people are calling me in the middle of the night, my kids aren't waking up, and yeah, I've been there. But I think the piece it's missing is the acceptance piece. Okay, so it's a matter of perspective, and the way to shift perspective is through the heart. So to open your heart, and you can do this little practice exercise right now. It has me in tears whenever I do it, but it's what I like to call cellular appreciation. So you close your eyes, and in that moment, no matter how sick or unwell you are, you look and you go through the space around your body, the skin in your body, the chakras, if you're into that, the organs, the cells, the DNA that's working tirelessly right now in this moment. If you feel like you can give gratitude for that, do it. And I will challenge you not to feel some wonder and awe at the amazement of this body that you're living in right here in this moment. If you're not in the space of feeling good, you don't have to do gratitude. It's a very important point. If you don't feel good, you shouldn't do gratitude. And just be aware that you are breathing and living in this moment. And that is freaking miraculous. You think about the millions of processes that go on unconsciously, and here we are worried about this person's not getting back to me and this, that, and the other. It's perspective. So yeah, I would say that's a very important place to start, is to look inwards, realize what's here in this moment. And then from that place, then a desire, which a desire is someplace different. I want more money. I want a different partner. I want, a new car or a house. And those things are all beautiful things. I'm not saying you shouldn't want them, but it's important for you to be one with the very thing that you want. And that's when desire comes with, it turns into an intention. So to bring back some wisdom, the Buddha said that the root cause of suffering is desire and attachment. And that's exactly what he meant. He meant that if we have desires that mean that we are not satisfied with where we are right now, we have to be somewhere else, then guess what? We have to, therefore there's an attachment. So therefore, if I don't get to that place, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not whole, I'm not capable. But if you stay in this place here and you accept fully this moment, this place, presence essentially, then of course the desire turns into an intention. And then wild things happen beyond your imagination when you do that. And I know it sounds optimistic, but it's very true. And I just encourage you to experience that if you're not already doing it.
I love what you said about if you're not in a place to have gratitude, don't do it. Yeah. And I think there's, like, we hear so often, meditate, do gratitude logs. And I'm someone who I'm deeply spiritual. I don't need to go out and shout it to them. Like some people have to show all the mala beads that they're wearing. Yeah. And for me, it's like, no, I know I'm connected, and that's all that matters. But the reason that I bring that up is everything that I do, I try to make what seems maybe esoteric or woo-woo within the spirituality realm into just more practicality. And so I really love that you had said it. If you're not feeling gratitude, don't, because it is very hard when your life feels like it's falling apart. And for me, and my audience knows this, the last year and a half has, like, I have been through a lot. 2 eating disorders, body dysmorphia, insomnia for 7 years, sleeping, addicted to Ambien for five years of that. I'm nearly stolen by an ice cream man when I was 7 years old, who was a convicted rapist. And I mean, like, there's been a lot of pretty messed up things that have gone on in my life. And my mother has called me Pollyanna my whole life, of just, I seem to have this spirit of believing and trusting and knowing something better is coming. And that being said, this last year and a half, I went through a divorce privately, and then of course it became public. I dealt with truly online trolls for the first time in my life. And they are, I can say, they are horrible. They're horrendous. And it's when I'm at my lowest, my weakest. I did an international move from Miami to London, didn't have the support of my parents during this time. And so then the last year and a half, it's like you're trying to rebuild yourself, but my body went into a complete freeze for months on end. So I can say is, like, it has been one thing after another. And there have been moments where and the reason I bring all of this up is there have been moments where I'm like, I'm having a really hard time finding gratitude right now. Yeah. Like, my life has completely fallen apart. And we know that death, divorce, and moving are the 3 hardest and worst things to go through. I did 2 of those at the same time. And we add on a death of basically my relationship with myself, my former self, my former partner, my mother even. And in that, and I want to share this, I don't know if you've encountered it, something that I did leading up to my birthday in June was, I was feeling horrible. I was feeling maybe the most depressed I've ever felt in my life. And I'm someone who, I lean on the gratitude side. I lean in the happiness side. And I was like, I don't know if I can handle another day. And I've actually, I don't know if I've shared this before, but I contemplated, do I actually want to be here on this life? And like, I'm so depleted. Yeah. And I genuinely asked myself, okay, Nikki, you have some Xanax, you have alcohol, like, do you want to? And that was such a humbling moment for me to ask myself, do you want to actually end your life? Because I also had a friend a month before commit suicide, a dear friend who did my hair for my wedding. And sitting back and asking myself that as Nikki Sharp, this positive coach transformation expert. And the answer was no, I don't. So being real with myself in that moment was one of the hardest. So talk about emotions.
I love
it
what
was
you
one
said,
of the hardest things I've ever done to sit there and ask that. And yet when I found out the answer was no, I don't want to do it. I then said, and it was this inner voice, the higher voice, what I call the true self, not Siamese twin, that ego-based fear, the fear voice. Instead, it was a voice that said, okay, babe, what are you going to do about it? And so leading up to my birthday, I started 30 days of love. And every single day I would write down in my phone, and this is where like taking a bath, a bubble bath that day, that would go on my 30 days of love, or going to yoga. And what I realized I was doing without knowing it in the moment was, one, I was changing the language. Instead of, oh, I have to go get my nails done, or I have to pay money when I'm already stressed out about money, or I have to travel across town to get my hair done. It was like, this is a loving thing I'm doing for myself. So it would go down. Number two, so I'm changing the language of have to, need to, should, which we know are more lower vibrations,
100%,
into higher vibrations of like, wow, I got to get my, I feel amazing that, oh my gosh. And I was putting action, the momentum, which we know compounds.
Right.
And so what I found from all of this was that although I was in the hardest time in my life, without a shadow of doubt, I was feeling that duality of emotion of feeling horrible, depleted, depressed, disillusioned, dismayed. And I started day by day, because of this action and momentum, as we were talking about, starting to feel little glimmers of hope. And I would be like, and they were tiny. They would happen, one little glimmer of hope. And then it would last a full day. And then it would be gone for a few days. But because of that momentum, I started feeling the duality of joy, which was love, and being able to say, I love myself, but I don't like aspects of my life. And allowing myself to sit with that was mind-blowing. So I just wanted to add that to confirm everything that you've said.
It's such a beautiful, vulnerable share. And one thing that came up immediately is sometimes we get confused between wanting to die and wanting a part of us to die.
Yes.
And I've experienced that too. I mean, you see me, I've got now tattoos, and I was not this guy, I'm unrecognizable. Some people would say they don't know me anymore. And in some ways, I can understand that. And I deeply resonate with what you shared. The other thing I want to talk about is dopamine from what you said. So I was going to sum up dopamine. It's do hard things, celebrate small wins. I think both are not done enough of, but my clients, most of the time, my clients are doing hard things. They're not celebrating the small wins. And they didn't understand, like you said, momentum, how powerful that really is. I mean, if you think about your own journey to grow into the person that you are today, it was a series of small wins. Journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, of course. So yeah, I resonate with much of that. I also have a very strong belief, and this is from the book from The Prophet from Khalil Gibran. He has a beautiful bit of poetry. If anyone likes poetry, I vibe on that. And he says, don't forget that the same cup that you drink your wine from was the same cup that was once burnt in the potter's furnace. So for me, this quote means that when we're experiencing deep sadness, which, by the way, the purpose of sadness is twofold. Number one, it's reflection. So you're losing something. So you actually, it's a superpower because it gets you to look like you did. You look inwards and you're like, right, let's have a look at this part of myself that I'm losing. And then the second version of it is to seek support. So yeah, if anyone is going through any difficult times, know that the same cup that you drink your wine from was once burnt in the potter's furnace, i.e. if you are experiencing some pain right now, you could be drinking wine from this same vessel soon enough and enjoying this life. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who isn't, a deeply happy person, who hasn't experienced significant suffering and setbacks in their life. So Yeah, I love what you shared, and thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to actually go back to what you mentioned about dopamine, and then we talked about it in the beginning of oxytocin, because as we're kind of uncovering and discussing emotions, and we've tapped into a little bit of joy and different stories and studies, as you're saying, dopamine, this is a really big project that not project, but various studies that I've been looking into and really, really understanding the brain and how there's different receptors, D1 through 5, if I want to geek out for the audience on the D1 through 5 receptors, then attach on to the neurotransmitters, and where we get dopamine come from different places. Now, there's healthy dopamine, going outside. We know having connection, conversations, eating nourishing foods. And then there's unhealthy ways of dopamine, like doom scrolling, we know, drinking. And so that's not to, and I share this in that I'm someone who, and on this podcast, I'm the most real human that you'll encounter, and that I'm like, I still drink, I get drunk, I go out. I'm not perfect in any single way. And I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to just be me in this moment.
Beautiful.
And the reason I say that is because going back to what you were talking about, intuition, and that third piece of when we beat ourselves up, is the amount of people that I see are reaching for unhealthy dopamine, the doom scrolling or the drinking or any of these different types of things, and then the shame and the guilt come in after. So now you have a double whammy going down the vibration scale. And something that I've learned, and I'd love to know if I'm correct on this, is that our brain naturally reaches for dopamine. And it's not like I'm reaching, but the brain seeks and craves dopamine, and more the higher sources of it, when we're not getting oxytocin. And the only way to get oxytocin is through sex, human touch, and childbirth.
Right.
And if you think about COVID, what was the thing that was taken away? Connection, touch.
Right. Yeah.
And where are we in a place now? More fear-based. People don't have time to meet up. So I just want to see, number one, am I correct in the research that I've learned?
So that's a really great point you brought up. So the 3 brain systems I mentioned, so you can't really be in threat and in soothe at the same time. So yes, you are right in that sense, that one will override the other, and that's why, it's important to focus on the soothe if you're in that. So yeah, that's absolutely accurate.
So then, knowing that, and as we've discussed, that we're in a kind of a more fear-based want society. People are in a lot more fight or flight at the moment, especially with wars and politics and rising prices. Like I can even say for myself, my rent is getting increased, and it's putting me into, I know my amygdala is getting tipped off, and I know I'm going into a bit of fight or flight. Like, fuck, what am I going to do? I don't know, and I don't have credit in the UK, so my mind's going into that loop. So what tips would you recommend to someone like me, who, when I find out my rent's getting, increased, or whatever it is someone's going through, and that fear-based mind is kicking in, how do we get back into the soothe?
Sure. And I deeply resonate with this. Even last Thursday, I got triggered, and it was intense trigger. So I had to put
what happened?
Well, I was in mediation. I was in mediation with my first wife. So
that'll do it.
That will do it. That will do it. Yeah, it's very, very. I have a lot of respect for anyone that goes through a separation. The other thing about dopamine is love, and dating apps, and it's a huge, huge, huge one. So we can talk about that in a minute. But 3As, and this is the 3A method and the self-compassion. I have a bit of a thing about 333s that came to me, and awareness is the first A, agreements is the second A, and action is the third A. So the biggest issue in the kind of self-development industry that I see is people are jumping into action without being aware or making the agreements, i.e. they're taking action from a fear-based place and not a love-based place. And we spoke a bit about that already. So what do? You first become aware. Simple as this. There's 4 points of awareness, okay? But the simplest is this. And go with your first answer. Do I feel good or do I feel bad? As simple as that. 'Cause sometimes I've been in it. I'm like, okay, name the emotion. I can't think of the emotion right now. I'm in stress. Like, there's not. Do I feel good? Do I feel bad? Here's the clue, right? If you're unsure, you're unlikely to be feeling aligned. So out of all those emotions, the basic emotions, only one is purely positive, happiness. Surprise can be. only happiness. So it just shows it's okay if you're not feeling good. Then there's other points of awareness. You can then name it to tame it, as you said, 1 to 100, number it, to get past the logical mind.
And what's that?
Just number how intense the emotion is, 1 to 100.
Yep.
And this is important to get past the logical mind. Sometimes the logical mind doesn't get on board with some of the woo-woo stuff, and that's a part of us we need to acknowledge. And then the fourth one is the one I go to all the time, which is how heavy or light does my body feel? Right? Because the body, the mind and the body are one. The body is a store for emotions. And so you can always look to your body. If you're feeling heavy, then you know that you've been triggered in some way. Okay, so now we know. Okay. And it's grateful awareness. It's like, now I know. I call it the lost keys moment. Now I know where my keys are. I'm glad I found them. Not, you're an absolute idiot for losing the keys and da-da-da. Because that's what often happens at that point. So the next A is agreements. And the agreements, I call it forgive agreements. Okay, so now we have to understand that we are not the only ones to experience this right now. Universality of human emotion. We all experience anger and fear and sadness, etc. And so guess what's really magic about this, Nikki, is that when we understand that we're not alone in our suffering, well, all of a sudden we're not suffering. Because as the Buddhists say, all negative emotion stems from a state of feeling separate. Okay, so this is a really important bit, and this is a bit that differentiates self-compassion from all the other practices. We do this common humanity piece. So you say to yourself, imagine, hand on the heart, like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one. I know I'm experiencing this right now. Notice I'm not kind of trying to layer any positivity onto this right now. It's just, we're seeing the situation clearly. This is a painful moment. Humans experience pain. I'm a human. Now we go a layer deeper. Okay, but there's causes and conditions to this. Okay, this is based on the Buddhist Noble Truth. There's causes and conditions for the way that I feel. Okay, I wasn't feeling like this through a few minutes ago. There's an event and there's causes and conditions. Great. So now I can do something about it. Now I can be empowered because I know I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. It's okay. I'm a human. There's causes and conditions for this. So I can forgive myself, right? It is not me. I am not identifying with I am the problem. I am the, I am the fear. I am the anxiety. I am the sadness. No, you are the awareness of those things. And this is what the mind will do. It will trick you and make you over-identify with your thoughts and your feelings. Once you've gone through that, then you can act, right? And I would say, there's many ways to get your list. I call them kind actions or self-love actions, self-compassion actions. And I love the 4 parts of the self: physical self, emotional self, spiritual self, and physical and logical self. These are the 4 parts of the self. And this is where you use intuition. What does my emotional self need? That's my inner child. Singing, dancing, creating, painting. What works for you in that moment? What does my logical self need? Learning, reading, etc. Physical, sleep. Oh, I can talk for hours about sleep. Sleep is so powerful. And I know what you're probably thinking, like, when I'm triggered, I can't sleep. I can give you, some tools for that if you'd like. And then, of course, spiritual self, if you're into the stuff like me, I'm into energy work. It's been profound in my own journey. Doing visualizing a light coming down, cutting cords, making sure I do grounding. So it's those 3 A's when you get triggered: awareness, agreements, actions. But there is a sequence, and that sequence is very important. If all you had time for was the awareness piece, this is a moment of suffering, I don't feel good, and you just sat with it without judgment, well, it would dissipate. And then all of a sudden, you realize you are the creator, and actually you're not here to be controlled by these emotions. You can get beyond the story. Last Thursday I went, and it took me a while. I just went and sat and relaxed, and I read, and I listened to I read a spiritual book, which is very important for me. I meditated, and I did my grounding practices, and and I slept. I slept long and hard, and it was amazing. And then the following day I was completely okay again.
You were feeling better.
Yeah.
And I love the tools and the steps that you just gave, because so often that I see, and this is taken, just as you had said, like the tattoos. I have some various tattoos, and you've changed. And I saw this little kind of meme, and it was a caterpillar sitting at a table saying, "You've changed," and then the butterfly saying, right, we're meant to. And I think we get so caught up in the, oh no, people need to stay the same. But if you're unhappy, no, we want to change. And then I see so often people numbing, suppressing, and avoiding and distracting themselves from feeling the actual emotions. And as we've talked about, emotions are measurable. And so I love the different steps. And I wanted to share just a very quick story that goes into the steps that you just explained. And then I want to come back to, before we have to end, the sleep tricks or hacks that you have, because that was something interesting and why this story came up. So last week I had just one of those weeks where you feel like you've been put in a washing machine and you're just like, what is going on? And it was just, every day felt like, what the fuck is going on, universe? And I really took a step back, and by the time the last thing happened, I just hit the ground, and I feel like I was there, and I crumpled to the ground and feeling horrible, didn't know what to do. And that's where it was kind of the awareness of like, wow, I feel really, really awful right now. Like, oh my God, I haven't had a week like this in a really long time. And so then I checked in with myself, gave myself permission, instead of that negative voice kicking in, like you've done something wrong. It was meeting myself with compassion and giving myself permission and we were talking off camera about, what do you want to do? And I was like, you can go anywhere in the world you want, Nikki. I give you permission.
Yes.
So I ended up doing a 2-night, I did a first night stay at one hotel, literally called One Hotel in Mayfair. And then I realized that wasn't enough to calm my nervous system to then get back into my baseline. And so then I did a second night at a different hotel. But during this, although I was having champagne and I was, just having a nice time, the reason it meant so much for me was because now I was being nurtured and taken care of. And I wasn't in that masculine, I need to problem solve, which is part of what happened last week. Yeah. So I'm being taken care of. It's softening. I'm getting dressed up. I'm having conversation, which is connection, which we know is dopamine and love. So therefore now I'm raising my vibration without even kind of consciously being like, I need to do these things. And I went down and I did the emotional wheel. I did a 1 through 10. What am I feeling for each one? My 9 through 10, I'm like, yep, all of that makes sense. I wrote down then why, what happened, and then what am I going to do about it? And I was like, wow, I've been leaking time, energy, money to all these people. So some boundaries. And it was a very interesting one. And to wrap that all up, and then we'll go to the sleep, is this week since Sunday, I have found, and I cannot tell you, like I've been a horrible sleeper my whole life based on trauma and my childhood. I have been sleeping 12 hours a night. And I wake, even today's podcast, I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be? I'm like, no, we're good, because I slept so deeply long, and I can see my body's trying to regenerate and rejuvenate. So in the last, I have so many more things I want to ask, and I'm going to have you back on, but would love to hear your tips about when someone is feeling really stressed out and that fear-based mind is kicking in and their heart rate is higher and they're in that sympathetic nervous state or system. How do you sleep?
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. This was one of my passions before I got into this work. I was doing talks on sleep. That's what you mentioned at the start. It is incredibly difficult, and I think probably one of the most powerful things to do is Navy SEAL technique. That I've got this up on my profile so people can look at that. But it's essentially a squeezing and an unsqueezing of all your muscles throughout your body, and you'll be naturally a bit tighter in that moment. So you go through like a body scan, but what we're doing is, I like to think of growth is quite paradoxical, right? The moments of our deepest sadness lead to our deepest joys. So in the same way, you're in the stress, so you exaggerate the stress with the squeezing of the muscles throughout the body scan, and then you release. And then you can do the box breathing, which is by far, the most powerful tool to reset the nervous system. So 4, 4, 4, 4. Guys, sometimes when you're in stress, you're like, I can't do 4, 4, 4, 4. Do 3, 3, 3, 3, do 2, 2, 2, 2. Whatever it is where you're becoming more conscious of your breath. And, you can layer on visualizations. For me, the visualization of like I said, that body, going through the body, the space around the body, the cells, the chakras, the DNA, the organs. You can do that. If that works, you can do a nature visualization. But as you get out of the fight and flight, if you have awakenings in the night, something that I should share with you is, something really amazing about sleep is the changing of the brain waves. So when we go from beta, a waking state, to alpha, to theta, to delta. So this happens every night as you go to sleep. And what we know is that theta, we're very programmable, i.e. when you have hypnosis or even meditations, if you go that deep, you can program your subconscious mind. So if you're waking in the night and your mind, it's your mind that wakes you up, okay? Because when we get to sleep, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's how we go to sleep. The prefrontal cortex comes back online, we're awake again. So when it comes back online, you tell your mind, you are in control of your mind. You say, mind, thank you. It's sleep time now, and you are directive with the mind. That trick for me is so simple, works very well, and it's because you're kind of in this more in between kind of alpha theta state that you can be a bit directive with the mind, and it will listen and calm down. I would say one more thing about sleep is that I think the number one thing people can do that's really not done, and I'm doing it right now, and it's a bit socially unacceptable, and I'm sorry, but I'm doing it, is being very strict with your bedtime. So an hour and a half when you wake up of difference, it's okay, but being very strict, like this is the time I am in bed, and my wind down is very strict around that. And it's been a real game changer for me because, of course, REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, we process emotions in rapid eye movement sleep. What do we live for? We live for joy and emotions. We live to be happy. So why does it makes no sense that we don't prioritize this REM sleep happens at the last portion of our sleep. So if we do not get the sleep window correct, then you're going to build up that kind of emotional stress. So we could go much deeper on sleep, and maybe we'll next time. But yeah, it's a big one
too. And that's just to add on with the sleep before we wrap up is that when we are not getting enough sleep, and this is from the more health and wellness side of things for everyone listening, when your body is not rejuvenating, it is not giving your mind a chance to process things. Your cells are not getting a chance to rejuvenate. And then you're keeping yourself essentially in the sympathetic nervous system or state, which you have increased cortisol. So then anyone who's trying to lose weight, it literally will not work. You're creating a blockage within energy. That's where dis-ease happens, which turns into actual disease and illness. So I think sleep within the wellness industry, and I get super frustrated about this, is the most people, there's a whole thing of how bad and how toxic alcohol is. And I'm like, I understand that. Great. We know that it's not great for you, but how about we shift the focus from the fear-based into prioritize sleep? And I've read the research on setting a nighttime alarm versus a morning alarm. Yeah. And we absolutely could go into more of that. So Dr. Nilesh Satguru, where can people find you?
So I love to connect with people. So do connect with me through my Instagram at Dr. Satguru. So DrSatguru. And drop me a DM. I've also got my website, and I look forward to hearing from anyone. It's just a joy to be here, and thank you for having me. I've really loved the conversation, Nikki. Thank
me
you.
as well. Thank you so much. And for both of us, I know that we would love to hear your takeaways, anything that you learned. So please drop either one of us a DM on Instagram. I love having just conversations and hearing what you think. If you are not subscribed to A Sharper Life, please do so. Please share this episode. I'm sure there is someone in your life that could benefit from listening and hearing all of the incredible information that we talked about. And until next week, here's to a sharper life.